Hello, parents and families of the Brown University community. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us today for our parent and family webinar. And this one is a roadmap to exploring career opportunities. We will get started in just a minute. I have a few bits of business to get through first. My name is Mikkel St. Germain. I am the Director of Parent and Family Engagement here at Brown University, and I'm happy to welcome you all to today's webinar. Uh, and thank you to everybody who joined us for our previous webinars this winter. They are all on the web page on the Parent and Family web section of the Brown University web. We have our study abroad from last Friday available if you missed that and you want to take a look. And we will be offering more throughout the spring, so stay tuned. Keep an eye on your email inbox. If you have any questions at all following this webinar, you can reach out to me directly using the family@brown.edu email address, and we'll get back to you with answers to your questions as soon as possible. Many of you submitted questions in advance of today's webinar, and we use those questions to create our program. However, as we go along, as always, if you think of anything else, please feel free to take a moment to use the Q&A tool at the bottom of the screen and submit additional questions, and we'll try and get to as many as possible throughout the session. We also have a closed captioner with us today who's typing live captions, and you can access those using the CC button at the bottom of your screen. So please take advantage of that if you need it. This session is being recorded, and like all the others, will be posted to our webinar webpage, and you'll be able to access that within about 24 to 48 hours. So if you have to drop off or you know somebody who missed it, they can view it at a later time. Or if you want to share it with one of your students, you can do that as well. Now that we have that out of the way, I want to introduce our very special guest who is knowledgeable about all things careers here at Brown. We have Matthew Donato, who is the Associate Dean of the College and Executive Director of the Brown Center for Career Exploration. I'll hand it over to Matt now. Matt?
Thanks, Mikkel, and thanks everybody for joining. I'm sure some people will continue to join as the meeting goes along. I want to just say, really appreciate being invited to speak to this group. This is always a fun presentation for me. I think I've done this the past few Januaries, and it's always great to hear directly from parents and family members what questions you have about the career exploration process for your students. I know many of you submitted questions, and I'm going to try to address as many of those as I can, but I would encourage you to also live while we're talking here today to submit questions. I think through the chat, that's probably the best way to submit questions. Mikkel is going to help me sort through those, and we'll certainly try to answer as many as we can. I did want to mention one thing. Mikkel introduced me as the Executive Director of the Brown Center for Career Exploration. That was my title until late in 2025 when we were fortunate enough to receive a naming gift for the center, which is incredibly exciting. So I'm technically the Executive Director of the Lizzie and Jonathan Tisch Center for Career Exploration. We're still in the process of changing our name on the building and on our website. But it's really exciting that the Tisch family is supporting the center and helping us continue to build momentum towards supporting all of your students with the highest possible level of career exploration support. I'm not going to talk a lot about sort of all of our programs. I'm definitely going to expand in my answers to your questions on some of the things that your students can access through the center. But one question that I get a lot, especially from parents and sometimes from students, is, hey, how can I come in and meet with someone? Or sometimes I hear, oh, like my student wasn't able to get an appointment, so they didn't go into the center in the fall. And I just want to emphasize to all of you how easy it is for your students to actually come into the center and talk with a live person, or even meet by Zoom and talk with somebody, or just email with somebody. So often, one of the ways that we meet with many students during the semester, especially some of our first year students who are just really getting started and need some orientation to the career exploration process, is through our peer career advisors. We have a team of 30 highly trained peer career advisors who do lots of work with students on resumes, cover letters, how to use resources in the Career Center like Brown Connect Plus, how to use Handshake, how to create a LinkedIn profile. They can really get your students a long way along the sort of early learning curve to being prepared to try out internships or do research experiences. And our peer career advisors have open hours, 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and 3 hours on Sunday. And our peer career advisors are available almost 24/7 if you email them, if your student emails them at peercareeradvisors@brown.edu. We have peer career advisors who respond to messages after hours and on the weekends. And then the other thing that you might not know is our peer career advisors also staff the front desk of the Career Center building. So even though open hours are 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and 3 hours on Sunday, in reality, if your student walks into the center and talks to the person sitting at the front desk, they can get advice directly from a peer career advisor during our business hours, which are generally 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. So that's one way to come in and have a conversation or start a conversation with somebody. I also want to emphasize if your student wants maybe to have a more in-depth conversation with a staff member, a full-time staff member here in the center, they can make an appointment with a career counselor through Handshake, which is our online career services platform. And the career counselors generally put their appointment availability out for 2 to 3 weeks in advance. And sometimes those appointments fill up quickly, depending on the time of year. This time of year, appointments are filling up quickly. Students are thinking about internships and research experiences for the summer. However, if your student goes into Handshake and can't find a time to meet with a career counselor, and they really, really want to have a meeting in the next week or even the next few days, they should just email the Career Center at career-center@brown.edu. We check that email daily, multiple times a day. And typically the career counselors will make time to meet with the student if they don't have availability on their calendar through Handshake. And then lastly, we also have a group of advising deans here in the center, our professional pathways deans, who talk with students on a little bit more of a limited basis than the career counselors, but do have some availability to talk about career exploration in their particular pathway. And so if your student is interested in meeting with a professional pathways dean, they can definitely find that availability again through Handshake, or they can email the dean that they're interested in meeting with directly to their email address. And often those deans will have time during the week to make appointment availability for students. So I just want to say, like, there's tons of ways to meet with people here in the center and to get to an actual person. In addition, over the course of the academic year, we host typically 200, or this year we're going to be host about 250 events that are just run by the Career Center. We did 130 events in the fall semester. We're going to do close to another 100 events, so maybe a little over 100 events in the spring semester. We have 24 events currently scheduled for the month of February, the remainder of the month of February. And so there's lots of opportunity to come in to a workshop or an alumni conversation event or a professional pathways preparation event and meet with somebody or meet somebody here in the center to talk about careers. And those 250 events aren't even including our employer events. And we have hundreds of other employer events, both in person and virtual, that students can access. At those events, they're not likely to meet with someone in the center, but it is an opportunity to meet with an employer or talk to someone who might be hiring for a particular role or for a particular organization. So I just wanted to give folks a sense of the breadth and the way that your students can connect in, because I think sometimes when you might ask your student, hey, have you started to prepare for summer internship applications? Your student might say, oh yeah, I tried to go into the Career Center, but no one was available. I can almost guarantee you that, not that your student's lying, but that they may not have used all of their resources to find someone, and you can now let them know, hey, did you know there's this way to find somebody and that way to find somebody? And at the very last resort, yes, you could email me directly. I don't I don't often have time to meet with students every day, but I'm always happy to have a conversation with someone, even if it's a brief conversation. I should also say that I'm speaking from direct experience when I share this information with you, because I'm not just a staff member here at Brown. I'm also the parent of a Brown first-year student. Last night, I was helping my first-year student edit some cover letters for internship experiences she was applying for the summer. And so I have firsthand experience with navigating those conversations about, hey, I wasn't able to do this or I wasn't able to do that. And she actually went to peer career advisor open hours on Sunday and got help with her cover letters before she sent them to me. And they were actually in really good shape, so I didn't need to edit them that much. So our peer career advisors do a great job helping students navigate these processes. Um, so that's kind of just a brief commercial for how to access our things. Um, I think what I'd like to do, because I was reading through the questions that were submitted in advance, and a lot of the questions lead me to points that I would normally make in these types of conversations. So I'm actually going to start maybe addressing some of those questions. And I know I'm sure people are starting to submit questions as well that I just haven't been following in the chat. But if you have questions, please do submit them. Um, One category of questions that people asked about were internships and work experience, which, as I mentioned, is going to be sort of a busy topic for us. It always is at the beginning of the spring semester. Students are preparing to look for summer internships. There are some industries where internship uh, postings their internship deadlines, excuse me, are coming up in the next week, or some have even already started to pass in early January. And we're working with students all the time on how to prepare their application materials, how to think about getting ready for interviews, and even how to start identifying opportunities. So if your student is interested in having a summer experience, whether that's research or internships, they should come in and they can meet with a peer career advisor or a career counselor. We do have a program that we run here in the center called the Sprint Fellowship Program. That's opportunities for students to do paid internship and research experiences here on campus with Brown faculty or away from campus with employer partners who we've developed relationships with. They can also bring an unpaid internship to us and request funding for that internship through the Sprint Fellowship Program. I will tell you that for the first application deadline for Sprint Fellowships, mainly the fellowships that are internships with organizations who we have a relationship with and are hiring Brown students, or for research experiences with faculty on campus, the deadline for the first phase of the Sprint Fellowship Program is actually today, midnight today. So if your student hasn't started that application, it might be a little tough to get up and down on it between now and midnight. There's 12 hours. But there are many opportunities in the Sprint program. And then if your student has an unpaid opportunity or has a research experience with a faculty member that they're arranging on their own, there is another deadline for those types of opportunities. Those are called either link internships or advanced undergraduate research opportunities. That deadline is coming up in early March. I believe the deadline is March 3rd for that. And so if your student is still looking for something or they're in the process of finding an unpaid internship and they need funding for it, they could still potentially pursue that through the Sprint program. All that being said, many, many internships are not posted now, and many of the internships that your students are interested in might not be posted until February, March, April, or even May. In fact, March and April are the two biggest months that we see for internship postings because many employers haven't yet made their plans for who they're going to hire for their summer internships yet or how many summer interns they need. I would say that we generally break down the job search process into structured and unstructured job searches. Structured tend to be what we used to call in the old days on-campus recruiting. So these are employers who we have relationships with, who are posting jobs with us and often at other universities, and they have a very structured timeline and process for how they hire interns. You might think now of investment banking, of finance, consulting, and to some extent technology. There's a very structured process, and there are employers who are bringing large cohorts of students into their organizations at once, and they're using those internship programs as early identification opportunities to hire full-time staff, or first-year analysts, first-year consultants, software engineers after graduation. Right now, most of the deadlines for many of those structured recruiting processes, like banking and consulting, have either already passed or are about to pass. And those are internships not for this summer, but actually for the following summer, for people's junior year summer. So as a first year student, or you have to get ready for this process. And then if you're a sophomore, you can apply for an internship now that would be something that you would get you get an offer at the end of the summer or during the summer, and that internship would actually happen during the summer of your junior year. It's a crazy cycle. We're not crazy about the timing of this. We don't love that some of our employer partners are recruiting so early and forcing our students to make decisions about this earlier. I had a conversation last week with my colleagues across the Ivy League about whether there's opportunities to push back on this. There was actually a question in pre-submitted question about, do we have timelines that we share with students? We do, and I'm actually putting in the chat a link to our finance industry timelines. There's also consulting firms in here, so it's finance and consulting technically. But I just wanted to share, like, some of these deadlines are really, really early, and we work with students and we support them meeting those early deadlines, but it's not always possible for many students, and many students aren't even ready to apply for internships before the spring semester of their sophomore year. So what I want to emphasize is we are really good at helping students through that unstructured job search process. Unstructured meaning there isn't a set of organizations that are coming to hire students to be environmental researchers, right? And I'm using that because my daughter wants to do environmental research this summer. So there isn't like a firm that's coming and hiring 20 environmental researchers from Brown and, coming and having a specific application date in the spring and then going through a really structured interview process. There are probably 30 organizations, maybe 100 organizations that hire environmental researchers all over the country, even all over the world. And so what we try to do in that unstructured job search process is help students understand who they are and what their interests are and what their skills are. We help them understand how to identify organizations and uncover organizations that exist that might be hiring, that aren't just posting jobs on Handshake or LinkedIn. And then we help them think about how to make connections, how to prepare their materials, and how to position themselves to be successful finding opportunities, even if that organization isn't explicitly hiring yet. Because sometimes it's really important to get in early, before opportunities are posted, and make a connection with an organization so that you can have your name in front of them and be more successful when opportunities do become available. So that unstructured job search process is harder to plug into. It requires a little bit more self-direction and also some motivation and understanding, but we're really good at helping walk students through that, especially if students are working with our career counselors, our peer career advisors, or our pathways deans. So if your student is thinking, hey, I want to do something in journalism, or I want to do something in publishing, how do I get into that? We can definitely help think about where those organizations are, where those opportunities might be, and what connections they can build through the Brown alumni community, through their own peer and family communities, through their local communities. We help think about how to use connections and make connections to be successful in finding opportunities. One thing that I would say that we do, there was a question about if someone is concentrating in English at Brown, are there specific types of jobs or positions that lend themselves to an English concentration? I would say not necessarily. We Not that there aren't jobs for English concentrators. What I would say is we tend not to connect career outcomes to concentrations. So I co-teach a class every fall called Exploring Career Options. If you want to find it in courses at Brown, the course code is UNIV 0456. We teach it every fall, and it is a sophomore-only course, although occasionally we let in non-sophomores into the course. And we do it for sophomores because at the end of sophomore year in the spring semester in a couple months, if you have a sophomore at Brown, your student will be declaring their concentration. And we try to teach this course in the fall because one of the important things we want students to know about career exploration is that the things they explore and they try or they might want to do when they leave Brown don't explicitly have to be connected to their concentration. Sometimes there is a connection between a concentration and a career. You might think of biology and going to med school, or you might think of being an econ major and then going into a financial services career. Those are common pathways for some of our students. But I can also tell you that there are many econ concentrators who go into teaching, or who go into marketing, or who go into healthcare. There are biology concentrators who go to law school, not med school. And so what we try to help students understand is there isn't a straight line path between declaring a concentration and pursuing a particular career. And if you want to pursue a career that doesn't seem to be related to your concentration, we can help you think through the academic planning and the planning outside of the classroom to gain the skills and experiences you're going to need to be successful in a job or internship search. So for the person who asked the question about internships for English concentrators, if your student is interested in pursuing an internship or a research experience that's English related, we can definitely talk about that. There are internships with like the National Poetry Foundation. There are internships with Penguin Random House. There are internships at newspapers. So in some of the traditional ways you might think of using an English degree, we can definitely help with that. But if your English concentrator is interested in doing a management consulting internship, we can also help with that too. So I don't want people to feel like the internship that students do has to be explicitly connected to a concentration. And that's a message that we give to your students frequently. And hopefully they hear that message from us frequently during their time at Brown. There was a question about can students participate in co-ops? Co-ops are a little difficult. Co-ops are usually internship and almost actually full-time work experiences that are connected into a student's concentration or area of study. We most often see co-ops around things like engineering. Like if you look at the bigger co-op programs that exist at different universities around the country, engineering tends to be an area where co-ops exist. And that usually requires a student to be working at an organization full-time for 6 months or more. And that doesn't often fit into the academic rhythms and structures at Brown. So co-ops are a little difficult for our students to do, although I do know students who sometimes take time away from Brown, take a personal leave to pursue a passion, whether that's maybe starting a business or going to compete in the Olympics or, doing something that's, a super cool volunteer experience somewhere. We have students that take time off. So if you have a student that's interested in something that's like co-op specific, we could definitely talk with them about that and how to structure it outside of the curriculum. But from the curriculum perspective, there really isn't an opportunity for students at Brown to do what you might consider a traditional co-op, like you might see at a school like Drexel or Rochester Institute of Technology or something like that. We had some students about some questions about arts and humanity, dual degree holders. This is more like guidance around specific, concentrations or programs of study. I would say like if your student is interested in a particular industry area, whether that might be art related or whether that might be like, science related, starting with a conversation with one of our professional pathways deans might be a great way to start. So I mentioned our professional pathways. We launched our pathways 2 years ago when we rebranded and reorganized the Career Center here at Brown. So we actually have 5 professional pathways, each led by a dean. where students can get guidance on how to navigate some of the intricacies of recruiting in those pathways, how they can connect with alumni or employers, how they might think about structuring some of their academics, both within their concentration or outside their concentration, so they can maximize their ability to pursue a particular pathway. The pathways are structured such that students don't have to commit to one or the other. So if a student wanted to meet with all five pathways deans because they were interested in five different things, they could do that. If they just wanted to meet with one and were really focused on a particular area, they can do that too. And just so everyone knows, our five pathways are arts and media, finance and consulting, technology and tech ventures, sciences and engineering, and then the fifth is careers and the common good. And what you'll notice is, they're pretty broad and they're pretty big, but there's also some overlap. And so I was just talking with a student the other day who's interested in investing, but wants to do socially conscious investing, right? That's a sort of a growing area of investing in the finance community. And so they are kind of interested in the finance consulting pathway, but they're also interested in the careers in the common good pathway. I've recommended that they meet with both deans to think about it from two different perspectives. And the good news is our deans work really closely together. So sometimes they're actually building programs together. So our careers in the common good dean is actually working really closely with our sciences and engineering dean on our upcoming climate career fair, which we're also working with the Institute at Brown for the Environment and Society, our IBIS program here at Brown. This is our second annual climate career fair, and it's an opportunity for us to bring students together, not just for looking at traditional climate-based careers, but also thinking about where they can have a role in things like sustainability or climate change remediation at an organization that might not be perceived as explicitly as an environmental organization. So last year when we did the fair, we had an alum from Apple come and talk about how they actually have a huge staff focused on sustainability with their products, with their software, and sort of their data centers, and how they're trying to mitigate some of the environmental effects of the products and the work that they do. And they have a whole team working on that. And that's an opportunity to work in sustainability in a field or in an organization where you wouldn't normally think, oh, like Apple is this place where I can focus my career on sustainability. So that's kind of cool for students to see the different ways that they can engage in this work that kind of get them out of their preconceived notions of what an industry or what a particular career pathway might look like. And that's really, really important for students as they're going through their 4 years at Brown. One thing that I do love is when students engage with us early. I don't put a lot of pressure on first year students to come into the center if they're not ready yet, because there's a lot going on in first year, as I know firsthand from my daughter's experience. There's a ton going on. But I think the earlier you start to engage in at least thinking about careers and thinking about who you are, what your skills, values, interests, and goals are, how you might want to make connections, and what are the things you want to try out. If you do that earlier, whether that's during your first year or maybe even in the beginning of your second year, you're going to have more time to engage in those processes. You're going to have more time to do internships or to have a campus job. Campus jobs are a great way to engage in career exploration. In fact, this week we have two student employment spotlight events. We've changed the name a couple times. But on Thursday and Friday, we're doing two student employment spotlight events where we'll bring hiring managers from around campus to come talk with students about the opportunities that they have for this semester and beyond. So if your student is thinking like, my resume is a little thin and I need to gain some experience during the semester, or oh, like I need some money, which is like my daughter, she needs money. So like, you know, get a campus job. That's a great way to develop your skills and to meet people and to sort of increase your engagement with the Brown community. And in the lead up to Thursday and Friday's events, we have a whole series of preparation events today, tomorrow, and Wednesday for help students think about how to maximize their time at the student employment spotlight events. So if you have a student that's interested in a campus job, please, please, please have them come out on Thursday and Friday to our events. And if they can't make it because they have a class conflict, they can come in and meet with Maysoon, who's our campus employment specialist here in the center. So I know she meets with students one-on-one. She has time and handshake. So again, easy to come in and meet with somebody and have a conversation. I did share that timeline. There were some questions about banking, consulting, and business recruiting. I shared a timeline, so hopefully you can all access that. We also do have a really robust career library on our website, which is organized by industry. So if you or your student want to go in and take a look at the resources that we've pulled together, some of it is like links to best practices. Some of it is links to our own like tip sheets and our own guides on how to navigate particular industries. Some of it is links to how to find opportunities in different industries. I would highly recommend taking a look at that. That's where I pulled that timeline from that we share with students. And we have relationships with, like, every year we have close to 300 companies that recruit Brown students directly through Handshake or through events that they're sponsoring for Brown students. We have a subgroup of 65 core employers of that group of 300 that come every year. We have another group of about 65 core employers. These are the employers that we've built strong partnerships with and are really committed to being on campus and to recruiting Brown students for roles in their organizations. And a fair number of those, in fact, the majority of those organizations, I would say, are finance and consulting. I'd say about of the 65 right now, 45 are finance or consulting organizations. We're actually trying to diversify the group because we'd like to not have it be too finance and consulting focused, but there are significant opportunities for students to make connections with organizations that are specifically targeting Brown students. And then we do have lots of events over the course of the semester to support students, especially because, as I mentioned, for finance, consulting, and technology, the recruiting timeline is so early that you really need to be putting in preparation time during your freshman year and during the fall semester of your sophomore year to be ready to hit the deadlines for those industries. So we do a lot of preparation events with our first and second year students to help them get ready for that process. And then general career support. This was the last category of question before maybe I address some questions that have been submitted today. So someone asked the question about advising access, which I think I covered. Skill building, what support do we have to assist students in preparing resumes? So we do resume workshops in addition to making sure that resume cover letter workshops, we do internship workshops. We usually have mock interview programs by industry each semester for students to prepare for their job interviews. Or if a student has an interview coming up and they just want to practice with somebody, they can schedule mock interview prep with either a peer career advisor or a career counselor. We do those frequently. That's one of the categories of appointments that students can select in Handshake when they look for opportunities to connect with a career counselor. There are ways for students to reach out to alumni. I briefly mentioned earlier Brown Connect Plus. Brown Connect Plus is our new networking, mentoring, and community platform. It's a partnership between the Career Center and our Office of Alumni Relations. And it really is a vibrant community of folks who are wanting to connect with each other and connect with students. So if you go into Brown Connect Plus, which you can all do as parents and family members, you won't be able to do everything in Brown Connect Plus. You won't be able to see too much, but you can definitely, if you're interested in volunteering to mentor students, you can sign up as a mentor. When your student goes into Brown Connect Plus, though, they can connect with over 100,000 Brown alumni all over the world. And there are ways that they can reach Brown alumni through Brown Connect Plus, either directly in sort of a chat feature in the platform, or they can often email Brown alumni who've made their email address available. They can also sign up to be mentored by a Brown alum, and the mentoring kind of happens on a rolling basis. So if your student's interested in mentoring, they can visit the mentoring portal in Brown Connect Plus. Also in Brown Connect Plus, there's not just alumni connections, there's also internship opportunities. So if your student is looking for an opportunity that is not just targeting Brown students, but has told us that they're going to hire a Brown student or they're reserving, spots for a Brown student, at least in their interview process, they can go find a Bruno opportunity on Brown Connect Plus. We're going to see a lot of Bruno opportunities posted over the next few months. Usually in the spring, we get hundreds of Bruno opportunities. Right now, there's about 3 dozen that are posted, but we're going to see that volume tick up, which we do every year. And again, Bruno opportunities are internships, research experiences offered by Brown alumni, parents, other members of the community who have said, I'm explicitly looking for a Brown student, and I'm going to give Brown students an extra consideration in the application process, if not even reserve my opportunity for a Brown student. So if any of you have opportunities that you want to hire Brown students for, please go on to Brown Connect Plus, and you can also post a Bruno opportunity there. We'd love for you to do that if you have the ability to hire a Brown student. And as I said, this is going to continue. This gets updated every day, so there are going to be more and more opportunities that come up on Brown Connect Plus. So Brown Connect Plus is a great resource for students. It can be a little intimidating, so our peer advisors are great at walking students through how to use Brown Connect Plus, how to make those initial connections, how to write an email to an alum, because it can be a little bit intimidating sometimes the first time you're doing it. But what I usually tell students is when you're networking, when you're trying to make connections with somebody who you don't yet know, if you get 2 out of 10 responses, even 3 out of 10 responses, that's a really great response rate. What we actually see in our community is that students typically get more like 4, 5, or 6 responses out of every 10 emails that they send. And so our community is really supportive and excited to make connections with students. And that's just not a talking point. There's actual data to back that up. Like we can see the data that how many students and alumni connect with each other through the platform. So I would highly recommend if your students looking to make connections or just get some questions answered about a particular industry, Brown Connect Plus is a great place to start. And I often show students how to use Brown Connect Plus and LinkedIn together, as do our career counselors. So that's something that, if you use both of those tools, it can be a really powerful way to jumpstart the networking and mentoring process for your student. We do talk with students here in the center about grad school, about pursuing a master's or a PhD program or medical school or law school. I will note that there is a pre-professional advising office in the college here at Brown that is not part of the Career Center, but in the pre-professional advising office in the college, they help students explicitly with med school applications because that's a highly structured process, and with advising around law school. We also talk with students about med school and law school, but if your student is thinking about applying to med school or law school, either right at graduation or shortly after, they should definitely meet with the pre-professional advising office. And we certainly have a great relationship with that office, so we direct students back and forth. But if your student is thinking about a professional graduate degree like med school or law school, or a graduate degree like a master's or PhD program, we can certainly provide some advising there. What we do find, though, especially for students interested in pursuing a PhD right after Brown, is that they're often working very closely with a faculty advisor. And we encourage that as well because the process of applying to doctoral programs really requires engagement with a faculty sponsor, if not more than one. So we do talk with students about it. We can help them get organized and help support their application, but we are often recommending that they should work with a faculty advisor as well, because that's just an important part of the process. And then creative. So this is I love this question. This is the last question, and then I'll certainly let Mikkel read me some questions maybe. What are creative ways for families to encourage students to utilize the resources available to them? I think that's a great question. And I know it's a struggle sometimes to communicate with teenagers and people in their early 20s and get them motivated to do this stuff. I just know from personal experience. What I can say is sometimes, rather than just asking the question, hey, do you have a plan yet for the summer? What are you doing for the summer? Like, what's going on? Do you have an internship yet? Which I do sometimes, so I'm guilty of that. I would say like a better way to start the conversation around career exploration is to ask them about their classes or ask them about the things they're doing outside the classroom. Have a conversation. What was your favorite class this semester? Or what was something interesting? What was an interesting project that you worked on in that, sociology class that you took? What was cool about the club that you joined? What role did you have in that club? Like, what did you learn from that? Like starting the question off that way and then pivoting to, hey, are you thinking about how that might apply to the thing that you're thinking about this summer? Or have you thought about how to expand on that work or that research or that experience with an internship or another research experience this summer? Like if you ask the question that way, sometimes the conversation is going to go a little bit better. And then you can say, hey, have you connected with someone in the Career Center about how to pursue that or how to, find those types of opportunities? I think that can be a better way into the conversation than just sort of that blunt, did you get your internship yet? Which, like I said, I'm guilty of, so I'm not gonna pretend that I don't ever say that. But that's my creative way for you to encourage your student to utilize the resources and also to have a little bit of knowledge, like I shared with you at the beginning, like it's pretty easy to come in. So if your student is like, oh yeah, I couldn't figure out a way to make an appointment, you can be like, oh, well, you could just walk into the center and talk with a peer advisor because they man the front desk. And you could just have a quick conversation with somebody or figure out how to schedule something outside of a career counselor's available appointments on Handshake. Um, so hopefully that's helpful. So I've talked a lot. Sorry. This is what I do. I could just monologue at people. What questions are available or what questions do all of you have that I can help answer for the people on the
Right.
call?
Matt, I'll let you take a breath. I'm glad you answered that one question because I thought that was a tough one. So those are some good tips. And I'm really glad you mentioned on-campus jobs because I
Yep.
suggest those to parents all the time, especially if they're students having trouble finding their community on campus too. So it's sort of
100%.
a double like benefit to doing that.
Yeah, when we talked with a bunch of stakeholders when we were sort of building out our reorganization back in 2022, 23, we did lots of stakeholder conversations. And what we heard from a number of alumni was that their campus job was the first way that they felt like they belonged in the Brown community. Because
Mm,
coming to college, especially for first year students, can be tough. It can
yeah.
be hard leaving your family, leaving your home, being part of a new peer group, feeling like, oh wow, classes are a lot harder than I thought they would be. I got all straight A's in high school and now I'm getting like B's. What do I do? Um, and campus jobs can be a great way to meet people, to build relationships, not just with other students, but also with like staff members. We have a great supportive staff with faculty who hire students. And it can also help students realize that you actually do have a skill set that's valuable and that is something that you should get paid to do. And then there's more skills that you can develop in almost every campus job here on campus. And that's one of the things that our center is committed to is helping hiring managers structure campus jobs across campus as internship experiences. So we've made lots of inroads with certain departments that hire lots of students, and we continually meet with other people who hire students around campus to make sure that their jobs are detailed, that hiring managers are identifying the types of skills that students will develop in those opportunities. And they're also doing support for students at the end of an opportunity to give them feedback and help them understand how they can improve and how they can continue to develop professionally. So campus jobs, even if you don't necessarily need the money, it's a great way to build community and to build up your resume a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you. So let's get into some of these questions we've got lined up for us. One we had was about resumes, and I guess the understanding or the impression is that all the resume help is through students, and just wondering if there are also professional staff who can help with resume.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of the resume help starts with our students. But if your student feels like, oh, actually, I need a staff person to look at this, and give me some more specific advice, especially when you're thinking about like the professional pathways. If you're like, hey, I'm trying to put together a resume that's appealing to an engineering firm, how do I do that? Um, then you might want to meet with Amanda, who's our assistant dean for sciences and engineering, and say, here's the resume that I created with a peer career advisor, or I created on my own. Can you give me some feedback on how to make sure this is really tuned to getting a job in mechanical engineering? And she definitely has the expertise to be able to do that. So for sure, like if your student needs to have someone else look at it besides a peer advisor, that's great. I can also just be really honest with you, like I'm 99% sure that most of your students are starting their resumes in AI using Gemini, which is, if you're using AI at Brown, you should be using Gemini because that's our official AI. Like, I'm not advertising for it. I'm just saying it's the most secure AI for Brown students to use because we have a contract with Google. I know students are also using ChatGPT and Claude and all the other AI tools out there. We actually put out on our website a set of AI guidance for students and how they can use AI. We don't discourage students from using AI to at least start or create an initial version of their resume and cover letter, but we also certainly recommend that students do their own editing and sort of customize it after they've used AI to create application materials, because AI isn't always super accurate and it may not always read in your voice. I've talked to employers about how they're using AI. There isn't consensus among our employer partners on how AI is used in evaluating candidates or how employers care whether students use AI. I can actually say most employers don't care that students are using AI to create resumes and cover letters, but very few are actually using AI when it gets to the end stage of the recruiting process. So if your student has questions about that, they can certainly come in and talk with us, but they can also check out the AI guide on our website, which gives some guidance. I'll try to pull up the link to that while you're reading the next question, Mikkel.
Okay. All right. So we had a question about UTRAs. So at Brown, that's undergraduate teaching and research assistant or awards.
Yep.
How is that related to Sprint? Is it part of Sprint?
So Sprint UTRAs, Undergraduate Teaching and Research Awards, you got it right. UTRAs are part of Sprint. And the deadline for applying for a summer UTRA, summer of 2026, is today, is at midnight tonight. There are Sprint UTRAs during the fall and spring semesters as well. For the fall semester UTRAs, that deadline I don't believe has been set yet, but it's coming up. It'll usually happen in March or April. And then for the spring UTRAs, the deadline is usually in October, early November. If you go to the Sprint website, you can certainly find all that information. I'll see if I can pull up a link to the Sprint website. The Sprint website is very, very detailed and has lots of information. So if you have questions, you can almost certainly find the answer on the Sprint website. But yes, it's unfortunately the deadline is today. So if you haven't started, you might be a little behind.
So one question too was, so say they miss the Sprint deadline, are there other internships out there that you can recommend that would at least allow them to have housing on campus or?
So that's a great question. So one of the benefits of the Sprint program is not just that we have this massive, repository of funded summer experiences and semester experiences for that matter. So last year, just for context, we funded 1,284 students with Sprint funding over the fall, spring, and summer, to the tune of almost $5.5 million. And so all of the Sprint opportunities, including the Sprint UTRAs, are funded by the college through generous gifts that we've received over the years to support student career exploration. But that being said, like if you want to do research at Brown, you can go talk to a faculty member. Sometimes faculty members have their own research budgets. Sometimes they don't. And if you do arrange your own research experience with a faculty member at Brown, you can apply as part of the Advanced Undergraduate Research Program, which is also part of Sprint, the Sprint AUR, Advanced Undergraduate Research. But that deadline is in early March, as I mentioned earlier. So you could still get Sprint funding. But we've also, because we have so many students on campus doing research experiences with faculty, as part of the Sprint program, we typically offer reduced rate summer housing here on campus. And we extend that offer of reduced rate summer housing to any student working in Providence, even if you're not necessarily in the Sprint program or working locally. So you could be in Boston and you would take the train up every day, but still live in Providence. We don't yet know from housing, what the rate will be or how many units are available. Typically, we've never had a problem covering the number of students that want to stay on campus. But we will probably know by early to mid-March what that will look like for the summer, what the reduced rate summer housing will look like if you're doing an internship or research experience here in Providence or around Providence. So I don't have an answer for that yet, but please check back. And I think there is some information if you look in the Sprint website. I'll see if I can find this particular link to reduced rate summer housing. But yeah, that usually is available for any student living here in Providence, doing an
Okay.
internship or something like that.
We got a great question about students who just have no idea where to start. What are the
Yeah.
resources for those students?
So those are our favorite students. Like those are the best students to work with. I'd say if you don't know where to start, sometimes coming in and meeting with a career counselor is the best place to start. If you talk to Ron Foreman, who's our longtime director of career counseling, he would tell you that like if you don't even know where to start or don't even know what questions to ask, come in and we can help you think about the questions that you want to ask. Um, and I think, it can definitely feel intimidating. And I think a lot of times students think they need to have an idea before they come in and talk with someone. That couldn't be further from the truth. If you come in as if your student comes in and they just have no clue where to get started, make an appointment, say, I think one of the appointment categories is I have no idea what I want to do. And then you just sit for a half an hour with one of our career counselors and just talk and have a conversation. And usually through that conversation and hopefully in a return visit, we can start to like put together a little bit more, like that's really a lot of that, the reflection process that we want to go through with students, helping them understand who they are at any given point in time, their skills, values, interests, and how those things might map onto the world that they want to explore. And career counseling tends to be very highly individualized. We don't have a one size fits all approach where we say, oh, like you're this type of student, so you should go do this. We really want to start from where you are as a student and make sure that we're helping you achieve your goals and also putting a plan together that respects and is aware of your needs, right? Like, so sometimes students feel bad coming in and saying, "Hey, I want to get a job that pays a lot of money because I have loans to pay off, or I need to support family members or something like that. I need to support myself. I don't have a family member that can support me, so I need to make money." So, and like that's fine. Like we don't ever like turn students away or tell them that they're bad people. Like, yeah, sometimes you need to like make a certain amount of money to do something. We also try to tell students that you don't always have to sacrifice your values to do, you can do well and do good. And so we talk with students a lot about how to balance those things. So if you have a student that's just nervous to come in or just doesn't know even what questions to ask, starting with a career counselor is usually a great way to initiate that conversation. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Excellent. Um, we just had a study abroad webinar last week, so this is a great question for that. If you have a student who is interested in going abroad junior year, what do you recommend from a career perspective? Should they do the fall semester or the spring semester if they're planning to do an internship the summer of their junior year?
Um, I mean, I honestly don't think it matters. I would prioritize the semester that's going to give them the best study abroad experience. If they're abroad during the spring and they're conducting an internship search in the US, it might be a little tough because you're, doing a lot of like hopefully academic stuff, but maybe some cultural and maybe some fun things abroad too. Um, and it can be a little difficult to manage your time and also to make sure you're aware of the time difference depending on the part of the world you're in and it can just be a little more challenging, but most employers nowadays are very adept at having interviews by Zoom or accommodating you if they know like you're abroad for an academic reason. So I don't have a strong preference. I guess it might be slightly easier to conduct your internship search in the spring if you were here. But sometimes the internship applications that you're applying to are going to be due in the fall for certain programs. So like, yeah, it really depends on what you're interested in and what you want to do. But I don't think you should make the decision to study abroad or not in a particular semester based on what your internship is going to be in the following summer. I think you can navigate it either way.
Great. That's really helpful. Another timing
I
question.
also want students to go abroad because
Yeah.
it's a great career skill to talk with future employers about being immersed in a different culture, maybe having language proficiency, maybe having like, just an understanding of like diverse perspectives. Like that can be a great opportunity and a talking point that you can use when you're in interviews for jobs in the future. So study abroad is a great career exploration tool.
Excellent. We have a question about your recruiting calendar. A little while ago, I put in the chat the link to this spring's recruiting calendar. They're wondering when you will publish your recruiting calendar for the 2026-2027 calendar year.
Probably closer to the end of the summer. At some point between now and I would say July, August, we'll probably update the link, the spreadsheet that I sent with the dates. Like we typically update it, and we don't always know yet what the schedule is going to look like until we get closer to June or July. So I haven't talked to my team yet, but I'm assuming that's when they'll update that sheet. Probably, certainly no later than like August before the 2026-27 academic year starts.
All right. Well, we're down to 2 minutes left.
All right, rapid fire.
I
Here we go.
okay. You got this.
Yep, got it.
Okay. So I'm lagging. Do you have timelines for healthcare and research as well as the financial one you shared?
I don't think we do, mainly because there isn't sort of that same cohort-based hiring that happens in those organizations. But if your student has a question about that, they should definitely talk with Dean Koo, Amanda Koo, who's our assistant dean for sciences and engineering.
Where does public health fit into the five pathways?
Yeah, that's a good one. It kind of like it bridges that sciences pathway. It bridges careers in the common good. Um, it even sometimes can bleed into like arts and media, which also focuses on communications. So it's kind of, I guess I would probably say start with careers in the common good. I think that's probably the best place to start. But then you might actually benefit from meeting with another dean as well. Or you can just meet with one of our counselors. Our career counselors, even though they're not deans with a specialty industry area, have a lot of knowledge of these industries. So it's not like you're not going to get helpful advice on public health or another industry from a counselor just because they're a little bit more of a generalist.
Okay. And what about students interested in law? What should they be doing over a summer?
Yeah, I mean, law is great because like you can do almost anything over the summer. You could go work on a film production and still apply to law school. You could go work, at a bank. You could go work at a, local community-based nonprofit organization. Law school, I think, has a lot of flexibility for how you can develop a skill set and then market it for what you're interested in. You may want to do something in a law firm. We have lots of students who get internships at law firms or with attorneys who have sort of solo or small practices. So if you think you're interested in a particular type of law, like immigration law or corporate law, maybe go try to find an opportunity, if not to have an internship, then maybe setting up a shadowing experience where you could find an alum who's willing to host you for a week and help you understand the types of engagements that they work on and how they're structured. That could give you some insight into the type of law you might want to study in law school.
All right. Well, we are at 1 o'clock. So any last words before we sign off? And thank you,
No,
Matthew. Really appreciate you being with us today.
no, this was great. I enjoyed it. I love the questions. Hopefully, I gave you some good actionable work to go forward with your students. But if your student just has a question, my default is let's come in and talk with us. Like, we're happy to talk either in person or by Zoom, and there's lots of opportunities to do that. So I'd love to hopefully all of your students will be into the center at some point this semester.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are in the world, and we will see you soon. Take care.